No one believed this could ever happen. Not here. Not in a land where the air cuts your throat at noon, where the heat reaches 50 degrees and where even the toughest shrubs curl up and die before sundown. And yet today, in the dead center of the Sahel, 100,000 hectares of oil palm trees rise from the sand like a green wall against the sky. Palm oil in the desert. To many, it looks like the biggest ecological illusion on Earth. To Traoré, it is simply a correction. Agricultural experts insist it's impossible. Malaysia and Indonesia call it an insult to their climate. European analysts whisper that something unnatural is happening under the sand. But the farmers walking between the towering palms don't whisper. They look up at trees that should not exist at fruit clusters heavy with oil, and they say only one thing. The desert is waking. Because this isn't just a plantation. It's a message, a warning, a beginning. And the question is no longer, how did Traoré grow palm oil in the hottest desert in Africa? The real question is, what is he trying to reveal beneath the ground these trees now sit upon? It began the way most of Traoré's revolutions begin, quietly, without fanfare, without warning. At 2:56 a.m., the Ministry of Agro-Sovereignty uploaded a single document titled, Sahel Palm Initiative, Phase 1 complete. No press conference, no announcement, just a file. But within hours, the world understood why. State television released the first aerial images at sunrise. And there it was, a sea of green, towering oil palms marching across the desert for hundreds of square miles, their shadows stretching over dunes that just 3 years earlier had been nothing but dead sand. The anchorman's voice trembled as he read the script. The Sahara has opened its hand. Traoré visited the site the same day, accompanied by engineers, military officers, and botanists. The footage showed something surreal: clusters of oil palm fruit, thick red glossy, hanging from trees rooted firmly in a place where rainfall averages less than 5 inches a year. Foreign botanists watched the broadcast in disbelief. Oil palms require heavy rain, deep soil, and humid skies. The Sahel provided none of those things. Yet the plantations were producing their first significant harvest only 22 months after planting, a biological impossibility by every known standard. Reveal number 1 came shortly after the project had achieved a 92% survival rate, higher than commercial plantations in Indonesia, Ghana, and Malaysia. And the numbers didn't stop there. According to the official report, yield density was 27% higher than global averages. Water loss was 40% lower. Heat resistance was beyond projected thresholds. Inside Burkina Faso, reactions fell into 2 camps. The young celebrated. They saw 100,000 hectares of oil palms as jobs, food, energy, and power, literal and political. The older generation hesitated. They had lived their entire lives under a sky that offered no mercy. One elderly man in Dori said, "Palm trees do not belong here. If they grow, it is because something else is growing with them." Across the continent, reactions intensified. Mali requested a technical briefing. Niger expressed concern about microclimate shift. Ghana offered to send botanists to observe. But the loudest reaction came from abroad. Malaysia accused Burkina Faso of bio-manipulated competition. The EU demanded immediate transparency into water sourcing. Environmental groups insisted the project violated ecological norms. Analysts in Paris even suggested, Traoré has engineered a hidden irrigation network beneath the sand. But official diagrams didn't show wells, didn't show pumps, didn't show pipes. The only explanation offered publicly was fog net generation full, a new version of Burkina Faso's atmospheric water capture system, fine mesh structures suspended above the plantations, collecting moisture from cold desert nights. But even FogNet couldn't justify the scale, or the speed, or the survival rate. The math simply didn't add up. And then satellite images began circulating online. Heat maps, moisture gradients, subsurface scans from independent researchers. They all showed the same pattern. The ground beneath the palm plantations was changing. Not just wet, but structured. Moisture formed corridors. Heat signatures formed clusters. Root density formed patterns that looked less like agriculture and more like a network. A geologist analyzing the images said, "This isn't a field, this is an operation." But the most unsettling detail came from a small line in one of the ministry's public PDFs, missed by most reporters, but not by those who understand Traoré's style. A line that read, "Palm core data acquisition ongoing." Palm core, a word no one had seen before, a word no one could explain. And so the first real question emerged. If the trees are growing this fast, what exactly is growing beneath them? Before we go any deeper, understand this. The next part of the story is where things stop looking like agriculture and start looking like something far more engineered. If you followed this far, you already know this isn't a normal project. And what comes next, the real reason Traoré chose oil palms, is the part most viewers never hear. So if you don't want to lose the next revelations in this investigation, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Because what we uncover in the next few minutes may change what you believe about the desert, about Africa, and about what a nation can build when no one is watching. Every time the world thinks it understands Traoré, he pulls back another layer quietly, deliberately, like a man peeling back the desert itself. The oil palm plantations were no exception. To the public, the Sahel Palm Initiative was agriculture, food security, rural jobs, energy independence. But inside the Ministry of Biosovereignty, the project had a very different name: Palm Core Subterranean Biogrid. And that name alone revealed everything the world had missed. Palm trees were not chosen for their fruit, not for their oil, not even for their economic value. They were chosen for their roots. Oil palm roots form vast, sprawling systems webs that stretch horizontally for meters and dig deeply through even hostile terrain. They behave like natural pipelines, probing, expanding, sensing. But the palms in Traoré's desert weren't natural. Reveal number 2 broke open the truth. These trees were genetically enhanced to create rhizo-network channels, biological tunnels that pull moisture, cool the soil, and open micro-pathways beneath the surface. Normally, oil palms hate heat, hate dryness, hate hostile soils. But these palms were not behaving normally. Their root systems displayed increased branching by 240%, high temperature tolerance up to 58 kilonewtons, moisture attraction through electrostatic gradients, ability to penetrate compacted sand crust. In simpler terms, they were designed to reshape the underground. Inside a leaked engineering file, a single sentence summarized the project's real goal. PalmCore is designed to create a controlled subterranean highway network. A highway network, not for cars, not for water, for information. Because embedded inside the enhanced roots were microsensors, tiny biological chips powered by the plant's own bioelectricity. These sensors measured heat flow, mineral density, subsurface pressure, moisture migration, hydrocarbon signatures. This wasn't farming. This was surveillance of the Earth itself. For the first time in Sahel history, a nation was mapping its underground without foreign geologists, without mining corporations, and without foreign satellites. And it was doing it using trees. But the part that shook the scientific community came from the PalmCore activation logs. The logs showed that the root networks were synchronizing not randomly, not biologically, but algorithmically. The roots communicated through electrochemical pulses, forming patterns that resembled computational sequences. A West African botanist who reviewed the logs said, "It's a plant-based processor, a living network." Foreign analysts refused to accept it. They called it propaganda, misinterpretation, bad data. But the evidence kept growing. Soil temperatures cooled in perfect geometric shapes, triangles, arcs, spirals suggesting controlled heat redirection. Moisture corridors formed in lines too straight to be natural. Pressure readings showed micro-oscillations following a fixed frequency. One line from the leak captured it all. PalmCore Phase I suggests early signs of emergent patterned intelligence. The world panicked. Malaysia demanded an international investigation. France accused Burkina Faso of attempting unauthorized subsurface resource reconnaissance. The EU labeled the project geopolitically destabilizing. But inside Burkina Faso, the tone was completely different. A young engineer interviewed anonymously said, "The palms aren't machines, they're guides. They follow something the desert already knows." That was the moment the real question emerged. Because if the palms were following something, what were they following? Traoré remained silent. He did not deny the leaks. He did not confirm them. But in a rare comment to national media, he said, "The desert is older than all our nations combined. If it wants to show us the way, why should we refuse?" And suddenly experts around the world connected the dots. The heat patterns, the moisture corridors, the directional root growth, the downward tunneling. They all pointed toward one possibility. The palm roots were not just reshaping the desert, they were moving towards something buried beneath it. A geologist in Dakar summarized it in one sentence. PalmCore is not an experiment, it is a search. A search for what? Water minerals, ancient aquifers, hydrocarbon pockets, or something older, something deeper. What happened next was no longer a scientific debate. It became a political storm, a regional alarm, and for some, a spiritual awakening. Because once the leaks exposed Palm Corps' true purpose, the reactions didn't just spread across Burkina Faso, they detonated across Africa and beyond. Governments demanded answers. Foreign analysts issued warnings. But the most revealing response didn't come from ministers or experts. It came from a single villager, a man who lived his entire life in the desert, and one morning saw the ground beneath a palm tree do something no one could explain. And that was when the world realized the real story wasn't above the sand. It was under it. What happened next was no longer a scientific debate. It became a political storm, a regional alarm, and for some, a spiritual awakening. Because once the leaks exposed Palm Corps' true purpose, the reactions didn't just spread across Burkina Faso, they detonated across Africa and beyond. Inside the country, the young were ecstatic. To them, oil palms rising from dead sand meant something greater than agriculture. It meant independence, power, proof that the desert could be bent, reshaped, reprogrammed by African hands alone. On social media, they called it the green spine of the Sahel. But the older generation didn't cheer. They watched with measured caution. They had buried too many children during the droughts. They had listened to the desert's silence for decades, and they knew silence is never empty. One elder from Gorom Gorom said quietly to a journalist, "If the palms grow this easily, it is because something below them is moving." International reactions came even faster. Malaysia accused Burkina Faso of creating artificial palm superiority that threatened global markets. Indonesia warned that bioengineered palm networks could destabilize trade. French environmental groups insisted that manipulating roots at this scale was ecocidal. In Brussels, a European commissioner went further. If Burkina Faso is probing subsurface hydrocarbons using palm roots, this is a geopolitical provocation. But Palm Corps was bigger than trade, bigger than agriculture, bigger than politics. The first true shock came from Niger. Their geological survey agency released a brief warning: the pattern of moisture corridors under the Sahel Palm Initiative extended several kilometers toward their border. Not randomly, not naturally. In a straight line. A Nigerian official exclaimed on live radio, "The desert is forming veins. Veins do not form on their own." And while experts argued, the most important testimony came from a man who had never read a scientific paper in his life. His name was Abdoulaye Souleymane, a 63-year-old date farmer whose land bordered the new palm fields. He claimed to have seen something at dawn that no one could explain. According to his account, the ground beneath one palm tree shifted not violently, not dangerously, but rhythmically. A soft, pulsing movement like a heartbeat under the sand. He pressed his palm to the soil and felt it clearly. A warm vibration, not heat from the sun, not wind, a steady living pulse. When a journalist asked him to describe it, he said, "I have touched the earth for 60 years. This was not the earth. This was something speaking through it." His neighbors laughed at first, until 3 more people reported the same phenomenon. Then 5, then 11. Within days, dozens of villagers claimed the soil around certain palm clusters breathed before sunrise. Scientists tried to enter the site but were stopped by security. The Sahel Palm Initiative had been declared a restricted biogeologic zone. This is where reveal number 3 arrived. Independent researchers using remote sensors discovered that the vibrating soil corresponded to periodic pulses of electrical conductivity, pulses traveling through the palm root networks at predictable intervals. Meaning, the palms were transmitting something, a signal, a pattern, a command. This wasn't irrigation, this wasn't moisture, this wasn't chance. The root networks were acting like biological conduits carrying microcurrents deep underground, and whatever was underground was sending something back. Foreign experts panicked. A U.S. analyst warned, a plant-based communication grid could be used to locate underground energy deposits without satellites. That gives Burkina Faso unprecedented strategic autonomy. France went further. Palm Corps may be allowing the activation of hidden hydrocarbon pockets. But inside Burkina Faso, people were asking a very different question. A softer question, a deeper one. If the desert is pulsing, what is it trying to wake up? Because the moisture corridors, the heat clusters, the directional root growth, they were all bending toward a single point under the Sahel. A convergence zone. A place no one had mapped. A place no foreign surveyor had ever identified. A place local nomads insisted was hollow under the sand. And the world suddenly realized everything Palm Corps was doing, The tunnels, the pulses, the routes, the signals was guiding the grid toward that point. The cliffhanger. The leaked Phase 2 document reveals the existence of a buried basin beneath the Sahel, and Palm Corps is awakening it. The Phase 2 leak didn't come from a journalist, a whistleblower, or a foreign agency. It came from a malfunction. A drone surveying the Sahel Palm Initiative captured an encrypted file in a Wi-Fi shadow, a file it was never supposed to see, never supposed to record, never supposed to transmit. But it did. And that file, now known globally as the Palm Corps Phase 2 fragment, changed everything. Inside the fragment was a single phrase stamped in red: Subsurface Basin Reactivation Protocol Preliminary Success. For decades, geologists believed the northern Sahel was lifeless beneath the sand, dry, solid, empty. But Palm Corps' sensors were detecting something else: a buried basin. Massive, ancient, and not entirely dormant. The leak included low-resolution subsurface images, shadows, curves, voids, enough for experts to recognize the unmistakable outline of a collapsed paleo-aquifer, a prehistoric water reservoir sealed away for thousands of years. But there was something even stranger. The basin wasn't passive. It was responding to Palm Corps' root pulses. Heat signatures at the basin's edge were oscillating. Moisture plumes were rising in regular intervals. Pressure gradients were shifting in sequences too precise to be natural. One scientist whispered on a televised panel, "It looks like the basin is breathing." And the roots, those genetically enhanced palm networks, were stretching directly toward its center, like veins connecting to a heart. Revealed from the leaked metadata, Palm Corps' directional root growth was not random, not accidental, not simply exploratory. It was guided. Palm Corps' algorithms were steering the network toward the basin, as if the system knew exactly where it wanted to go. This was the moment analysts panicked. Paris. This is subsurface interference with unknown consequences. Washington. This could trigger geological destabilization. Brussels. Burkina Faso is conducting unauthorized hydrocarbon reconnaissance. But the fear intensified when another line in the document was discovered, a line that had been partially deleted. Hydrocarbon memory pockets detected within, and then a clean black rectangle censoring the rest. Hydrocarbon memory pockets, no one had heard the term before. Some experts speculated it meant traces of ancient oil or gas. Others believed it referred to biological remnants trapped in the basin. But one thing was clear: Palm Corps wasn't just reactivating water, it was uncovering something else. Something buried, something sealed, something that was never meant to resurface. The final seconds of the leaked drone footage showed something even more disturbing. A cluster of palm trees bending not from wind, but from tremors rising through the sand. Their fronds swayed in synchronized waves as if following an underground rhythm. A soldier on site muttered into his radio, "It's moving. The basin is moving." Then the footage cut out, and a single question ignited across every newsroom, every embassy, every scientific forum. What is Traoré trying to wake beneath the Sahel payoff? Traoré breaks his silence and reveals the basin's true identity, and why the world wanted it buried. For 6 days, Traoré said nothing. Not a word, not a comment, not a denial. Then, without warning, he called for a live national address, the first of its kind since the Sahel Reclamation Act. The world held its breath, and this time he didn't come to reassure anyone. He came to reveal what Palm Corps had been searching for. Traoré began calmly, almost softly, as if explaining something obvious. The desert is not empty, it is layered, it remembers. He explained that Palm Corps' root networks were not drilling, not fracturing, not destabilizing anything. Instead, they were mimicking natural processes once common in the Sahel, the slow revival of ancient moisture channels that fed the region before centuries of drought. But then he projected an image onto the national screen, a 3D render of the collapsed subsurface basin detected beneath the palms. It was enormous, a curving underground bowl stretching for miles filled with cold vapor and sealed sediment layers. But the basin wasn't the shock. What stunned the world was what lay along its inner walls. Fossil biofilms, traces of ancient microbial ecosystems, hydrocarbon residues, not industrial oil but natural organic memory, the chemical fingerprints of a once-living water system. Reveal number 4 landed like an earthquake. The basin wasn't a petroleum reserve, it was a buried river. An entire prehistoric waterway, older than Burkina Faso, older than the empires that once crossed the Sahel, a river that had dried, collapsed, and been entombed under pressure for thousands of years. Palm core's root signals had triggered a response not from oil, but from the basin's ancient hydrologic memory, a process where heat pressure and biosignals caused trapped moisture to migrate upward. It wasn't drilling, it wasn't mining, it was resurrection. Traore looked straight into the camera. "We did not uncover oil. We uncovered a river that your maps erased." The room erupted in applause, but a broad panic deepened. France issued a statement accusing Burkina Faso of weaponizing hydrology. The European Commission warned that reactivating ancient water systems could alter regional climate flows. A U.S. spokesperson went further. "Reanimating geological structures without international oversight is reckless." But Traore was ready. He projected new data. Moisture rising through palm core channels had cooled the surface temperature across 14 square kilometers. Nighttime humidity increased by 11%. Soil hardness decreased by 37%. And a shallow aquifer once declared completely dead was now measurable again. He then asked a question no Western official expected. "When foreign companies drilled thousands of holes into our land for resources, where was this concern? Today our roots touch the earth gently, and you call it dangerous." He paused. "We are not destabilizing the Sahel. We are healing it." But the strongest moment came from a woman standing behind him, Dr. Aminata Traoré, one of the lead geochemists on the Palm Core team. She stepped forward holding two vials, one containing water drawn from a modern well, the other containing vapor extracted from the reactivated basin. She held them up side by side. "This water," she said, "is younger than my country. This water," she pointed to the ancient sample, "is older than civilization." Then she delivered the line that silenced even the harshest foreign critics. "We didn't drill for the past. The past rose to meet us." Her words went viral across Africa. Millions of people watched them on loop. But her presentation included one more revelation, a detail most viewers missed but every expert noticed. Pressure readings around the basin were stabilizing. Moisture release was coordinated. Root pulses were adjusting without external commands. Palm core wasn't just reactivating the basin, it was communicating with it. A living system with living response from something ancient beneath the Sahel. And suddenly the question changed. No longer, is Traoré destabilizing the desert? But what happens when a nation can talk to the land beneath it, and the land talks back? While the world debated politics, oil, and geopolitics, the truth emerged not from a president or a general, but from a young woman in a small sand-colored research outpost at the edge of the Sahel Palm Initiative. Her name was Kadiatou Diallo, 27 years old, a hydrologic systems analyst who once studied flood patterns in monsoon forests, places that looked nothing like the desert she now lived in. Kadiatou had been assigned to analyze low-frequency resonance patterns inside Palm Core's underground sensors. Her job was simple on paper: track the basin's stability. But one morning at 4:17 a.m., the readings changed. Not randomly, not mechanically, not even organically. They changed rhythmically. The basin pulses, those subtle oscillations of pressure and moisture, deep beneath the palms began to align with Palm Core's root pulses. Perfectly. At first she assumed it was equipment drift. Then she thought it was environmental noise. Then she blamed the calibration logs. But the pattern remained. Every 5 minutes the basin sent a thermal micropulse, and every time Palm Core's roots responded with a matching electrochemical signal. Mirror-like, synchronized, deliberate. She ran the data through a model, then another, then a third from a university's open-source lab. The results were identical. Palm Core and the basin were no longer acting as two separate systems. They were behaving like a single organism. Her voice shook as she recorded the first internal report. The basin is not just awakening, it is synchronizing. This became reveal number 5, and it landed harder than any previous revelation. Because if Palm Core could communicate with the basin, and the basin was responding, then this was no longer agriculture. This was integration. That afternoon, Kadiatou visited a village named Tin Akaf, where oil palms stretched like green towers against the sand. There she met old Mama Zara, a 76-year-old woman who had lived her entire life near the desert's edge. Zara approached one of the palms with the reverence of someone visiting a shrine. She pressed her fingers into the soil, closed her eyes, and whispered, "The ground has a heartbeat again." Kadiatou knelt beside her and did the same. She didn't expect to feel anything, but she did. A faint vibration, warm and slow-moving, not outward, but upward, as if the land was breathing toward the surface. Kadiatou asked how long Zara had felt this. Her answer was unsettling. It began when the first fruits appeared. The trees arrived, and the desert answered. For the first time, Kadiatu understood Palm Corps' true mission. It wasn't about oil, it wasn't about water, it wasn't about energy. It was about restoring the desert's lost memory, and the palms were simply the interface. Wells that had been dry for decades began recovering. Night humidity rose. New grass appeared at the base of dunes. Children played in soil that had once been too hard to crack with a shovel. For the first time, villagers believed the desert's curse might be broken. Scientists in Mali and Niger detected similar paleo-water signatures beneath their deserts. Suddenly, Palm Corps wasn't a threat. It was a blueprint, a possible way to reclaim the entire Sahel without foreign loans or drilling rigs. Energy corporations grew quiet. Mining conglomerates panicked. If Palm Corps could wake a basin this size, what stopped Africa from mapping and claiming every underground resource across the continent? One London analyst admitted, if this is true, then Africa just unlocked the greatest energy shift in modern history. Palm Corps had rewritten the geopolitics of land using nothing but trees. As Kadiatu prepared her full report, she noticed a final pattern deeper in the basin data. A slow rising rhythm, stronger than before, more consistent, like a signal trying to break through centuries of silence. She marked it in her notes. The basin is preparing for something, but she didn't know what. And as she stared at the map with every root corridor, every moisture vein, every synchronized pulse bending toward the basin's center, one question consumed her. If the desert is waking up, what is it waking up to become? The desert was never supposed to come back to life. Not in our lifetime. Not in anyone's lifetime. And yet here we are watching an ocean of oil palms sway across a land that once cracked under the sun, watching underground rivers breathe again through palm roots, watching a basin sealed by 1,000 years of drought awaken like a sleeping memory. Because Palm Corps was never just an agricultural experiment. It was a message written in roots, and the desert answered. Now the world must face three truths. For the first time in modern history, Burkina Faso controls its own subsurface map, not one drawn by colonial geologists, not one quantified by foreign corporations. A living map, a responsive one. Villages are seeing wells recover. Dunes are stabilizing. The soil no longer feels dead. A country once defined by scarcity now stands on the edge of abundance. Across Mali, Niger, and Chad, scientists are detecting the same ancient basin signatures. Palm Corps proves the desert isn't just something to survive, it's something to restore. This changes everything: food security, water politics, regional stability. If the Sahel learns to revive its own forgotten rivers, the entire region could undergo the largest ecological reversal in African history. Energy corporations can no longer dictate where Africa's resources begin or end. Mining giants can no longer say what lies beneath African soil. Geopolitical powers can no longer claim dominion over maps they did not create. Because the land is speaking for itself, and Africa is finally listening. And now the question haunting every scientific lab, every foreign ministry, every corporation is simple. If Africa can awaken a river beneath the desert, what else can it awaken? This story is not ending, it is beginning. In the next episode, Palm Corps Phase 3, the opening of the basin. If you want to see what happens when the underground finally rises to meet the surface, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with this journey. Because the desert is no longer silent, and Africa bows to no one. Disclaimer: this video is fictional storytelling created for education, commentary, and entertainment. It is not a factual report or official information. Any similarities to real events are coincidental. Please enjoy it as creative content only.